Hi there, welcome to my seminar on language history. Today I'm going to discuss the human language history throughout the world. In this capstone project, I will answer the question, how did the language of the earliest human evolve into the language we use today? How did those spoken language evolve into written language? And how did people in the past begin to use translator to communicate with other individuals who spoke different languages? This capstone seminar will concentrate on the history of language in 8 different parts of the globe. I will divide those regions by timeline entry. Thus, I will discuss 8 timeline entry from different parts of the world. The first 4 timeline entry I will discuss in these capstones are the land of the two river timeline entry, which is the country of Iraq today. The Silk Road timeline entry, which is the road used to be used for trade and traveling through India all over the continent of Asia. The Shang Dynasty, which is the country of China today. The Caliphate timeline entry, which is a country in Middle East, or we can say call it an empire over Middle East, which is stretched a little bit more into Europe. The rest of the timeline entries are the West African Kingdom timeline entry, which is African today. The ancestral Babylon and the octonal timeline entry, which is North America or America today. The Kingdom of Koshan, it's hard to pronounce those old names. Timeline entry, which is Ethiopia today. And the Inca Empire timeline entry, which is Peru today, a country in South America. Now let's look at each timeline entry closely and discuss their contribution to language development and global connection at their time. And the first timeline entry we will look at is the land of the two rivers. And I will start with the land of the two rivers because the land of the two river people, or the king, which is called Hammurabi, have provide the world with the oldest written piece in the world today. So yeah, it's very important timeline entry, so I choose to put it first at my capstone. So as we can see, like this timeline entry goes back to 3,500 years before history, BCE, and the land of the two rivers was located in the center of modern-day Iraq and part of Syria. The land of the two rivers was a significant region in the ancient world because it played a crucial role in establishing trade and language exchange. This timeline entry is particularly significant for my research because the oldest coherent written script belonged to the monarchy of the land of the two rivers. Hammurabi was the ruler of the land of the two rivers, and he left behind the earliest written piece in Akkadian language, Code of Law. This is Hammurabi, our guy. Yeah, he was so proud of his law, so he ordered it to be script on a stone for us to read today. For this timeline entry, I will use the Hammurabi Legal Code primary source. This is very important primary source in my capstone, because this is the oldest primary source we know today, and also it still exists. And we have a translation of it, which we can read and understand, which I consider to be a global significance. The Hammurabi Legal Code primary source describe how individuals treated equally under the law. Through the development of the earliest written language in 3500 BCE, the people of the land of the Two Rivers taught us a great deal about their way of life and legal system, which is also I consider to be a global significance. Now we're going to look at a code from the Hammurabi Code of Law. It's kind of a, to me, this primary source act like a constitution of their time, because it says here, if a judge has heard the case and giving a decision and deliver a verdict, and afterward his case is disapproved and the judge is convicted as the case of misjudgment, then he shall pay 12 times the penalty awarded in the case. This code tells us a lot about Hammurabi way of communicating with his subject, include judges, and how he wanted his word to be remembered. It's a clear Hammurabi want to show us or show his subject that his people are equal under the law, and in fact he like kind of give a judge a 12 times harsher punishment if they give unfair punishment to a regular subject, which is kind of really, it would ensure like nobody would be treated unfairly. I like this one. Now we're gonna look at the global significance of the land of the Two River timeline engine. Hammurabi codes, such as an eye for eye, is still prevalent in many areas of the world today. Yeah, that's correct. I have heard this code before, and I was actually surprised to find it in the primary source because I didn't know it's belonged that way in the history. The Hammurabi legal code was written in Middle East, and now it's in French, in a museum in French. Yeah, that's correct. The primary source was created in Middle East, and it's moved to be hosted now in a museum in French. Its image are online accessible to individual worldwide. Yeah, that's correct. The images of the primary source, if you just Google Hammurabi, the legal code, you can find many of it online. And it has been translated into numerous languages, including English, so that it is comprehensive to diverse population. Yeah, one example is now I'm reading it in English. The second timeline entry I will look at is this Silk Road timeline entry. People started to travel around, through a road throughout the Asia continent, which is called the Silk Road. People start to use this road in 100 BCE to 1453 CE. One language development I looked at in this time period is the Indo-European language. The Silk Road was a well-traveled network of paths connecting East and West society. Along the Silk Road, people travel and transport and exchange a product marketplace, which is led to language exchange. The Silk Road played a significant role in world history and separated language because it's connected individuals from many parts of the world for economic and political purposes. For the Silk Road timeline entry, I will use the Trojan of Pergamon and Bacterian Record.pdf from the Human Record primary source. This PDF name, if you Google it, it's going to show you jewelry, like some art of those people. But here, the PDF is named after those kind of historical artifacts. This is not the actual PDF I'm using, but it's a picture just to give you an idea about how the PDF I wrote look like. Here we're gonna look at the code from the PDF. The Koshan Empire spoke in Indo-European languages was a combination of nomadic people who the Chinese know as the Yoza. Yeah. So the Chinese call the Koshan Empire differently. Here we're gonna look at the history or the development of the Indo-European language. The Indo-European language family is divided into 8 groups with language still alive today. Yeah, some of these languages are still alive today. Albanian, Armenian, Belarusian, Slavic, Celtic, Germanic, Hellenic, Indo-Iranian, and Atlic, yeah. So those languages still are still in use today, which is part of the Indo-European language. Thus, the Silk Road have significant contribution to global history and language development. I choose this code from the primary source to present in my capstone because it's talking about the artifact that demonstrate the rich and interplay of culture along the Silk Road, even after the fall of the Han Empire. So I like this code because first it's talking about the culture and the development of those people artifact, and it's also mentioned the Han Empire. So it's an evident global connection because we're not talking about the Koshan anymore. Now we are moving to different empire, and it's also mentioning their love to luxury. The Silk Road enabled language and culture exchange, leading to language development due to trade and people love of luxury and comfort. Yeah, this is mentioned in the code how the king love the luxury and artifact, which is actually found in everywhere in the area. If you just Google it, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Like we are allowed to use only one primary source in this capstone. I'm doing this capstone as part of my assignment for my History 101 at UBC. And I wasn't allowed to use as many as I want of those primary source our professor present for us at the course. It's amazing. I feel like I pictured the Silk Road activities throughout those primary source. But unfortunately, I wasn't allowed to use as much as I want. Otherwise, I would present way like a clearer picture about these people. Like, and I do encourage you to Google every word you don't know in this capstone, because yeah, it's gonna take you in a place you wouldn't imagine. It's gonna give you a lot of information, and if you are looking for an idea for research or capstone, it's gonna give you a lot of idea. This is a student advice. And finally, we're gonna look at the global significance of the Silk Road timeline entry. The Silk Road timeline entry, of course, play a significant role in global connection and language exchange because people throughout the ancient continent was using the Silk Road for trade and other purposes for traveling. The primary source also provides information about the Koshan Empire, who speak Indo-European language, the and other people who use the Silk Road, such as the Han Empire, which speak Chinese, the Bactrian, who speak Eastern Iranian language, the Shang Dynasty, who speak Chinese language, and other people like Arab who use the Silk Road for travel, which is a clear evidence for global connection between those empires and people. Now I'll proceed to the Prophet Muhammad and the Islamic dynasty timeline entry, which is gonna add the Arabic language to my capstone. The Prophet Muhammad and the Islamic dynasty timeline entry took place in the 16th century in Middle East. This is not an actual paper. I just got it to show you an idea how people at that time used to live and travel. And yes, camel was a type of vehicle for transportation. And yes, people used to travel through the Silk Road only by camel. Isn't that amazing? Like, these people were powerful. I wouldn't travel anywhere with a camel now. Actually, I don't know how to ride it. Prophet Muhammad. Prophet Muhammad is the Islam founder, was a religious, social, and political figure in the Arab world who confirmed the monotheistic teaching of Abraham, of Adam, Ibrahim, Musa, Jesus, and other prophets. The Quran is an important element for the development of the Arabic written and spoken language. The Islamic dynasty also contributed significantly to the language development by encouraging people to travel for trade and education. Yes, actually, the Islamic world encouraged its people. We started the capstone with the land of the two rivers. The land of the two rivers is in Middle East, which is also the Islamic, like we can call the Islamic countries in the Prophet Muhammad time. And Islamic dynasty actually started in Syria, which is part of the time of the land of the two rivers, and also in Iraq, which is the Abbasid Caliphate was in Iraq, which is also the heart of the land of the two rivers. So yeah, we are going back to the same region with different people who contributed to establishing new language. Now we are at the Arab, now at the time when the land is inhabited by the Arab. And our timeline entry is the start of the Islamic era by Prophet Muhammad and the Islamic dynasty and their contribution to trade and education in the area. For this timeline entry, I will use the Quranic PDF primary source from the human record. The Quranic PDF contains some of the earliest Quranic texts and images of the great Mosque of Cordoba in Spain, demonstrating the human connection between the Middle East and Spain throughout the Islamic history. Now we're gonna look at one quote from the primary source. Quote: the Caliph's Islamic army conquered the Middle East, North Africa, Spain, and portion of North India. As Islam separated, it also developed internal division over matter of religion, practice, leadership, and other issues. Economic activity, scientific development, and culture flourished during the Umayyad 661 to 750 and Abbasid 750 to 1258 dynasty. And finally, we're going to look at the significance of Prophet Muhammad and the Islamic dynasty timeline entry. The spread of Islam has had a significant influence in trade and the human connection and the Arabic language development because Arabic mostly the only language spoken and written in Islamic community, mosque and Islamic classics worldwide. Thus, by encouraging people to travel for trade and education, Prophet Muhammad and the Islamic dynasty contributed significantly to the development of language and the human connection in the 16th century to the 12th half of the 13th century. Next, let's look at the Shang Dynasty. The Shang Dynasty timeline entry is one of the oldest timeline entry I'm looking at in this capstone because these people flourished in the 1766 to 1122 BCE, which is before history, and they spoke the earliest Chinese language. The people of the Shang dynasty thrived in the Yellow River, China, and evolved from Neolithic society into large, more unified culture and society. The Shang dynasty timeline entry is important for language development because they provided the world with one of the earliest written pieces in the world history. For this timeline entry, I will use the Chinese oracle bone primary source. This is a picture of it. It's a kind of a way the Chinese people used to write on bone. It's come from the shoulder bone of an animal. That's how they used to record information. It's amazing. It's amazing because it's still available now in many museums in China and outside of China, and people still can read it today. The oracle bones method help us visualize the Chinese dynasty life. Thought on Zhang, this is the name of a day. They call it Zhong, Yong, something like that. Day, the birth will not be virgin. It shall be girl. Like from this code, we know like the people was predicting the day where girls are born, and they did not. They call it unfortunate day. Like they did not actually admire female in their communities or in their family, which is sad. But we still can picture their mentality through this primary source, which I found it amazing. Another quote here says, Hong on song. I think this is the day, it's another day name. Day we divined about whether young illness, which is not be fatal. The prince, this is the prince name, saying Khan will die. So they are predicting the day the prince will die today. Yeah, and will occur today. Yeah, and they are predicting some disease. This tells us a lot about these people. For example, we can see that the Shang Dynasty people prediction, believed in prediction and used this oracle bone method to record this important date, which is evident of the importance of written language in their time. And it's also important in global significance because it's helping us to read their idea and prediction and visualize their culture. Like, isn't that amazing? I really enjoyed this capstone. Now let's look at the global significance of the Shang Dynasty and their language development. The Shang Dynasty developed their own language independently without the use of letter or grammar from people from other land dating back to the Neolithic society. The oracle bone script gives us an idea about the Shang Dynasty lifestyle and their values. And the Shang Dynasty used the writing method to document significant date, and it contained wealth information about their life and beliefs, which is available to us today. So yeah, it's clear they have made a great contribution to language development and written language development and the global history. Now let's look at the West African Kingdom timeline entry. This timeline entry took place from 1214 CE to 1500 CE. The West African Kingdom timeline entry is essential for establishing communication between Africans and the Muslim and began trade and language exchange between the two regions. Travelers like Ibn Battuta are an example of the Islamic world and the West African interaction in the history. For this timeline entry, I will use the Ibn Battuta Human Record.pdf primary source. This is not the actual primary source, but I want to give you a visual example of how this time looked like. The primary source discusses the kingdom of Moli, speak Gaza, an ancient Ethiopian Semitic language. The Gaza is the classical language of Ethiopian and is still used by Ethiopians, Christian, and the Battuta Israeli Jewish community for religion purposes. The Meridian Sultan speak the Amazigh language, and Yemen spoke Arabic and still speak Arabic today, also mentioned in the primary source. Another people who traveled throughout the West African Kingdom for trade and work also were mentioned in the primary source. So the primary source did mention variety of language used on the land, which is an evidence of language exchange. Ibn Battuta, a human record source, gives us a detailed info about the West African Kingdom. For example, if you look at the code, he says, water comes from underground source. Modern is a plentiful. Their clothes are of fine quality and Egyptian or in origin. Most of inhabited belong to them of outside beauty and are more highly regarded than men. So yeah, he's describing the water where it's come from, the quality of their clothes, their in connection with Egyptian, and actually there are many more detail in the primary source which I could not like share in such a short presentation. Ibn Battuta is an Arabic travel, and he was writing about West African Kingdom who speak African language, and the code also confirmed Egyptian connection, which all are clearly evident of global connection. So now let's look at the global significance of the West African Kingdom timeline entry. Here is another code from the primary source talking about their houses and mosques are built of blocks and salt and roofed with camel skin. There are no trees, only sand, which is a salt mine. So yeah, here she's talking about their building and he's mentioning they have mosques, which is kind of an evidence of Islamic connection even before Ibn Battuta arrived to the region. Thus, the West African Kingdom timeline entry is crucial for language exchange and separate of the Arabic language and African language. Yeah, of course, because throughout the traveler like Ibn Battuta, language Arabic become familiar in the African Kingdom, and African Kingdom needed people to speak Arabic to work as a translator for those travelers. We also saw global connection with an evident global connection with Egypt. So this timeline entry actually play a significant role in language exchange and human connection in the world history. Next, I will look at the ancestral Babylon and the tonal timeline entry, which took place from about 100 to 1300 CE. In this timeline entry, I will focus at the Tonoso people, which spoke also Tonoso language. Yeah, these people named their language and land over after their king. This is just to give you an idea about the place where these people lived in North America. The ancestral Bablu and the Tano. The ancestral Bablu and the Tano timeline entry is crucial to understand indigenous history and language development in North America, where Native Americans flourished and built their culture long before the European arrived to the continent. The ancestral Bablu and the Tono are prehistorical Native American civilization in the US and in New Mexico between 100 BCE and 1300 CE. Yeah, these people lived there long before, which is hardly mentioned today. For this timeline entry, I will use the not so silent stone from the Human Record PDF primary source. This primary source is also provided by my professor. It's from the Human Record book. It's amazing book. I will use it. I will use it in the future whenever I need a primary source for any history class. It's amazing. And I will provide the citation for it in the video description. Yeah. Don't hesitate. Use it if you need. It's a credential. So the primary source provide information about Native American history and language development. One of the Native American group that the primary source mentioned is the Tinosa Society. I think I mispronounced it. The Tunasa language, also called Tunasa after the king. The Tunasa people worship idols at the time of the primary source. After I believe many of them convert to Christianity. Here we're going to look at the code from the primary source, which is a proof of language exchange. Father Ramon Bana is a Spanish missionary who began in late 1459 he lived among the Tunasa. Let's say Tunasa. He mastered their language and composed detailed report on their culture, their worship, palms, or zam. This is the name of Sami, the name of the person or their god or the person, their ancestor, were believed to be the protective spirit of that deity or an ancestor that were an image made from stone, bone, shell, wood, ceramic, and even coating. So they made this idol out of so many different material and worship it. The quote is also an evidence of language exchange because it states that Father Ramon Bona mastered the Native American language. Yeah, of course. Now let's look at the global significance of the ancestral bubble and the tonal timeline entry. Father Benel's communication with the Native American is an evidence of a global history due to his Spanish and Christian missionary background. Another evidence of global history is his description of Native American has been translated into English and discussed at universities such as UBC, where I first heard about their stories. And also, there are traces of trade and communication has been found as far as St. Lawrence. So yeah, these people had a training far away from their place, had communication with Spanish missionary. They had languages exchange with Father Ramon. They taught him his language, and they of course has known his language to be able to teach him their language. So it's absolutely the timeline entry of the ancestral bubble and the tonal has played significant role in global connection and language exchange. And now we will look at the Goshen Kingdom timeline entry, which took place from the 100 CE. The Kingdom of Goshen was a major trade power in the Northeast Africa, with access to the Indian Ocean and the Red Sea. The Goshen Kingdom played a crucial role in establishing trade and linguistic exchange between Africa and Asia. For this timeline entry, I will use the Ezana inscription primary source. This is not the actual primary source actually. This is just a picture of it. I downloaded it from online and used it just to give you an idea about it. For this capstone, I'm using a PDF primary source provided by my professor, just to have the credential needed and meet the requirement for the assignment. But this is one of the actual picture of the actual primary source. I'm using the English translation of it. The Ezana stone is still standing in modern day Azun in Atlantic. This is a quote from the actual primary source. In the faith of God and the power of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, save me for the kingdom by the faith of his Son, Jesus Christ, who have helped me and will always help me. This quote tells us a lot about Ezana, the ruler of the kingdom of Goshen, and his Christianity. Yeah, this quote actually told us about his way of communication, his idea and belief to his people, and the way he presented on the stone to make it accessible to us today. So through this word, he is able to communicate with us today and tell us about his life and belief, which I consider it to be a great contribution to language development and human communication. Now let's look at the global significance of the West African kingdoms. We know from the name the West African kingdoms that there were more than one kingdom, and the fact that the Ezana script was written in 3 different languages is also an evidence of language exchange between these kingdoms. Because the kings decide to write as a script in 3 languages, which is Gaza, Spitting, and South, which is a South European languages. And the Greek is a clear evidence that the king was in communication with people from different background and language, and it's also an evidence of how language development goes side by side with power development. So it's a clear that the West African kingdom has played a significant role in language development and the human interaction in the kingdom's history. The final timeline entry we will look at in this capstone is the Inca Empire timeline entry, which took place from the 1200 to the 1532 CE. The Inca Empire timeline entry is important for understanding Native American language and culture development. The Inca Empire first appeared in the Peru around the 12th century CE and ruled. Their empire stretches from the north border of modern Ecuador to the Mo River in central Chile. For this timeline entry, I will use the Horka manuscript primary source. Again, this is not the actual primary source. I'm using a PDF from the human record, yet I'm just presenting it for you guys so you know how it's look like. The primary source help reader understand the Incas and their way of living and how they made a living. It is significant because it's as the preservation of the Indian language. The Horo manuscript is a complication of Native American religion, tradition, image of their superhuman, and how the word imagined by the Indian at that time. And finally, we come to the global significance of the Inca Empire timeline. And to look at this quote from the primary source saying the manuscript as a titleized book about the inherited tradition, custom, and life way that would give Indian memories like a Spanish literature memory, a more immortal visual. It's clear that the Inca Empire people was trying to leave behind literature following the footsteps of Spanish people. This is an evidence of global connection between the Incas and the Spanish. And the Inca also had a significant influence on indigenous history and culture with their language still spoken today. So it's clear to us they had left literature behind, still communicating with us through their work. They contributed to the development of the Native American language. Their language is still being used today, and this is the end of our capstone. And just a reminder, through this capstone, we covered the history of language development in 8 different parts of the world. We covered 8 different cultures and empires, and we used 8 different primary sources in this capstone, and citation or references for this primary source will be found in the video description, and I will also use my full written, if the system allow me, I will use my full written paper about those part of the world and their history on the video description. And thank you so much for watching my long video.